What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the debut album by Justin Timberlake. Basically, this album is called Justified and it came out in the fall of 2002. Now, Justin Timberlake was a member of NSYNC and he had a number of years of popularity with them, but he went solo throughout the early 2000s and such, and he was starting to really blow up around this time. And this is basically one of the central albums, especially in R&B of like the 2000s decade. This got a lot of accolades, wound up almost going 4 times platinum, had a Grammy nomination for Album of the Year. So there was a number of things that kind of happened on here. It was kind of revolutionary in a sense also because he was one of the initial ones to really mess with like the Neptunes like that and kind of get Pharrell and some of them. Timbaland was on here too, but Pharrell and Timbaland, the Neptunes really produced some of the singles, and it kind of fleshed out some of the Neptune sound that folks like Jay-Z and Snoop Dogg would also do. But a lot of this was just different from R&B before that. Like when I think about it, between this album and like Beyonce's Dangerously in Love and some of these type ones, there just were some good R&B albums that really helped peak and kind of get more contemporary R&B kind of in motion, as opposed to it just being like a one-hit single and then the rest of the album being ballads kind of thing. So Justin Timberlake had a pretty contemporary example of how to do R&B, and I definitely like the concept behind it. Had a lot of good things going for it. Had its disco dance club bops on here. It did have some good ballads, had some ruminating moments, had some great blue collar jams on here. Just a lot of good things that had a good essence of what to do with an R&B project. This is a pretty figurative one, and it almost gets a 10 out of 10. It's pretty much on the cusp of it, but we'll get to some of the things about it. But I just would have to say this is a pretty excellent project and just a good example of something if you want to refresh your memory with like the 2000s decade and see stuff as far as how it was in the early 2000s in terms of like some R&B that is not just streaming prone and kind of more like this ruminating kind of sprawling kind of car anthems and that type of stuff. I mean, there are some vehicle anthems on here, but just to be able to say a trip back 20 something years ago as far as that kind of goes, it's actually pretty central, and it's not that outdated. I mean, it still sounds like a lot of these songs on here sound pretty relevant. I just would have to say it's got some real jive towards it, just in the concept of being able to see it. So that's really the thing. So um, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the singles. So yeah, it turns out there were 5 singles on this album, which I wasn't really expecting. I remember there being at least 4, and I remember Justin Timberlake did like a song for like McDonald's called like "I'm Loving It" or something like that. I think he dropped around this time. I don't know where that song is. Sometimes I remember in the past Wikipedia said that that song was actually on this album, but I don't know what happened to it or where it went. So that was kind of a miniature McDonald's song that he did. But then there was also the 5th single, "Still on My Brain," which I think was just recently added because folks didn't terribly know that that was a single, but I at least know the 4 singles. Then we'll talk about "Still on My Brain" also. So the first single was "Like I Love You," and this is a good, excellent example. The first single is "Like I Love You." This is an early evening dance bubbler. Just has a nice kind of acoustic guitar lick in there, just like a feisty kind of maybe Spanish guitar or something like that. It's a song that has lust and hype about it, and it's just got some hype jive as far as that kind of goes. And it's just, it has some lust in the song and some hype jive about it, and it's just an early evening boiler to kind of start things off as far as that kind of goes. I just like the concept of getting this one. It's a song I didn't used to appreciate in the past. It's kind of a more recent time, so I can think about liking this song. I just didn't like the beat as much previously, but it is a pretty nice, good cut for stepping out in that sort of sense. It competes with "Rock Your Body," where I feel like "Rock Your Body" is just more kind of immediate in terms of the production quality, but I feel like "Like I Love You" is kind of like an off-the-wall kind of abstract one that works extremely well, and Pharrell really helps boost this song too. He's kind of got the background vocals on here like he does with Jay-Z and stuff, so that's pretty good. It's real nice hype jive with some good guitar licks and just early evening dance bubbler as far as that kind of goes. The next single is "Cry Me a River." This is one that he did with Timbaland. This is an early rendition of the sound that he would do with Future Sex Love Sounds with songs like "My Love" and "Sexy Back" and some of those type songs from that particular album. But this is a good example. Like Timbaland in the early stages, this is the sort of sound that he would flesh out later with Justin Timberlake and Nelly Furtado and folks like them and that type of stuff. I just would have to say it's a good example. It's a 2000s era R&B staple. I definitely feel like this is one of the more definitive songs of like the early 2000s. I would have to say it did a lot of damage. Was a top 3 song. If you're tired of like "Sexy Back" and "My Love" by Justin Timberlake, this is a good song to dig up because it all but went This song all but went #1. It was pretty damn close. I feel like it's a makeshift gem. This is definitely a song that you can play SFW, that type stuff. It's a decent dance bop at that. This kind of has like a little bit of jive, but just more of like a mid-tempo song that just works extremely well. It's interesting that Justin Timberlake was able to get some of these mid-tempo bops too. It's because Like I Love You is definitely more of an up-tempo, and Rock Your Body is more up-tempo. But this one's just kind of mid-tempo. This is kind of like a nice kind of cool end kind of midday hours makeshift kind of gem that just has like that kind of syrupy melodies and just overall good jive towards it. So it's definitely a good staple of like the early 2000s, I would say, especially in R&B. One of my more favorite songs out of the singles on here is Rock Your Body. This is the third single. This is a real disco-like dance club bop. Really like the jive of this one. It's a lively, kind of feisty jive that this song kind of has, and it's just a good party starter. I would definitely say the melodies on this song are pretty excellent. This is a good example of Justin Timberlake being able to tear this. This is a good example of Justin Timberlake being able to tear this song apart. This is an overall kind of one where I feel like this one has some of the most I feel like Rock Your Body has some of the most immediate kind of flashiness on here. This is probably one that this is like the most kind of contemporary in terms of like the revolutionary kind of sound that would happen. But Cry Me a River did that pretty well too. That was a trailblazer. Rock Your Body was definitely a trailblazer. Just had some real disco, electronic kind of R&B. And then Like I Love You is a good Neptune song that helped carve things out too. So it's just all good ones. But this one's probably the most immediate in terms of production, I would have to say. It was just an overall highlight, definite good one. Senorita is the fourth single, but I would say that Rock Your Body is not quite as much of like an SFW, maybe an SFW kind of after hours party or something like that, or get together, but it's not really makeshift kind of stuff like Cry Me a River is. But another makeshift kind of song that's pretty good for like blue collar feels is the fourth single, Senorita. This one's just a real midday kind of makeshift malaise kind of song. It's just a blue collar bop. I feel like this is another companion to Cry Me a River. Not quite as immediately catchy, but definitely a good follow up to that. It's good just because it's the fourth single, and the fact that JT was able to do this 4 times and get some of those. I feel like it's kind of a wrapping things up, ruminating kind of song. I feel like this is the kind of song when you're near a vehicle or in a vehicle, something like that, and you're just kind of talking, wrapping things up, talking with folks, getting ready to peel out, getting ready to leave, that type of stuff. Just in terms of some of those contexts, just talking with the initial folks, whether it's a woman or otherwise, before you tail out. This would have to say it's a good song for that sort of concept. I do like the idea. It just really fits for like makeshift and kind of blue collar type feels. It's just an interesting, it's kind of like a mid dance bop. It can be, but I feel like it just doesn't have that kind of jive and liveliness in mind as much as like the first 3 singles do. This is just more of like a standard kind of daily living kind of song in a lot of ways. I just feel like it's just kind of more ruminating and congregating type, or it's just more congregating type feel about it, that would be. So the 5th single is Still on My Brain, and this is kind of like which I didn't know about this song. I had to look it up, and it turns out that this was released as a single, as like a last-ditch effort to kind of get some more promotion out of it. It didn't really chart that well, but it was at least the attempt to do it, just because Senorita was doing pretty well. So I would say that Still on My Brain is like a low-key kind of hangout, smoky R&B kind of tune. It's just a real smoky, kind of sultry kind of one. It's just more of a ballad. It's a good example of a ballad. Like for the most part, when I hear ballads, they're always kind of just like piano-like and just kind of overly emotive and just kind of have like a lot of more longing that just kind of has like a lot of, or just the mood of it is just not quite as pitched. But I feel like this is a good example of just kind of more of like a decent hangout session, hangout sessions before like the streaming sessions and that type of stuff. It's a good hangout song to kind of have like the candles lit and that sort of stuff as far as that kind of goes. It's a good example of that. It's a good early 2000s type R&B hangout gem that's a ballad. So yeah, so that's the 5 singles on here. I feel like so that's the 5 singles on here. So I'm going to talk about the 9 songs out of 13 I recommend. So those 9 songs would be Senorita, Like I Love You, Cry Me a River, Rock Your Body, Nothing Else, Last Night, Still on My Brain, and She Said Take Me Now, and Let's Take a Ride. So basically, if you're looking for another after hours hangout cut similar to Still on My Brain, just with a little bit more jive to it, I would say Nothing Else is a very good example of that. This has a real great produced beat on here, just really kind of pretty contemporary R&B sounding type stuff. Just good kind of keys on the song. It's a sultry, kind of glaring R&B after hours cut. Definitely feel like it did a great job of that, and it's just got a good groove, and it's a great hangout song. I would definitely say this is another one that's just another excellent song that has a fantastic example of an after hours hangout session as far as that kind of goes. So it's just a good one for that. So like another song that's kind of for like the after hours, but just more in like a late afternoon, kind of early evening type feel, is Let's Take a Ride. This is just an early evening kind of cruise track, just some after hours, just kind of 6:30, 7 p.m. type bop, hanging out at the park, some of those type moments, just kind of simple, simplistic, kind of straightforward kind of evenings with some mid jive about it. I feel like it's a good example of just some kind of early evening after hours type fare as far as that kind of goes. I feel like And She Said Take Me Now is a good companion to Rock Your Body. It's a dance bop that kind of has a fleeting feel, as like the chick that you're trying to snag at the club is about to dip out in that sort of sense. So it's a good companion to Cry Me a River, or it's a good companion to Rock Your Body and Like I Love You, but it's just kind of one that has a little bit more jive towards it, just a little bit more busy and kind of fleeting in the sense that you got to lay game flat before it's too late, and that sort of concept. It's a real nice late night kind of cut as far as that kind of goes. And the thing about some of these songs is Justin Timberlake doesn't have a super overabundance of these songs. Like I really say that Like I Love You, Rock Your Body, and Take Me Now are about the most immediate ones that have the most nightclub kind of oriented sense, but they're all good examples of it. I feel like these are all pretty good standard nightlife, and it's just kind of for early 2000s where there weren't a ton of club bops that kind of did that. I mean, you'd have things from like the 90s like Genuine's Pony and some of those type records, just R&B records that would get like maybe one record or something like that. But this is a good example of like some widespread kind of nightclub and dance club life that just had like some good fare about it. So it's just a good example. Janet Jackson doesn't really lay a verse on the song, but she just kind of does like a little bit of an intro to the song and that type of stuff, but it is a pretty good job as far as that kind of goes. And then Last Night's another nice one. This is like a butterflies in the stomach. I feel like Last Night is another gem. This is a butterflies in the stomach kind of evening gem. It's a getting ready to step out kind of song, and it's got some good jive about it. I feel like this one definitely is kind of one that would give me butterflies when listening to it, just as you get ready to step out, and that feeling of knowing that you're going to have a pretty great time. Just as a pretty good example of just like some goosebumps giving kind of production on here. It just feels like an evening gem as far as that goes, as far as it's really like the kind of thumping kind of keys in the song, or just whatever that kind of happens to be in the song. Is just a good example of just a stepping out kind of tune as far as that kind of goes. It's not quite like a full blown At the Dance Club and party cut, but I feel like it's just like a primer for that, just as you get dressed and you get fresh and that type of stuff, and you get ready to step out, and you're just getting ready to have a good time, and you're just excited. Maybe you're in the vehicle getting ready to get there. Just that initial kind of warming up to the party kind of feel as far as that kind of goes. Just the idealism of just getting ready to have a good time. I just like the overall jive of this song. It's just a good one for that. And yeah, that would basically take care of the 9 songs I recommend. That would basically take care of the 9 songs I recommend. I just would have to say that to talk about some of these ones I don't recommend, like I feel like Oh No What You Got just kind of had like a bad kind of more outlandish kind of production on there that just wasn't a good jive for a song. I just didn't really like the arrangements of that beat on there. And I feel like Take It From Here and Never Again were kind of some ballads that didn't work. I feel like they probably needed to be more like Still on My Brain and Nothing Else. I feel like those are better examples of kind of more sultry and kind of sleepy kind of ballads and kind of hangout session type songs. But Never Again and Take It From Here were just more earnest songs that just didn't quite have the pitch. Those are just more typical kind of 90s R&B type ballads. And then Right For Me was trying to have like some jive. It's too bad because I like Bubba Sparks. He was on this song, but it's just a pretty poor production. I mean, both Oh No What You Got and Right For Me were just kind of bad productions on here that just didn't have the example of good contemporary bops that they needed to. So that's just kind of the concept. But I look after it like me liking basically 9 songs out of 13 on this album. I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 9 out of 10. It's just going to get a solid 9. I like it that much. If I had liked one more song, I probably would have given it a 10. But for the most part, it does damn well good damage as far as fleshing out like an excellent R&B album. This is pretty much a central one. This is before T-Pain. This is before Akon. This is before Trey songs. This is kind of in the pitch of like, in some cases, this is before Beyonce went solo. So, I mean, Beyonce had Destiny's Child, but this is a good example of some stuff that just kind of kicked forth and set off like some good contemporary R&B that would manifest, 2002, 2003, 2004. It was just kind of R&B was kind of going through a metamorphosis around this time, and this is just a good example of something that helped flesh that out. And I didn't realize that as much in the past, but I do realize it now. So this is kind of, yeah, the social score I'll give a 10 out of 10, just as an example of that. Five great singles that all hit pretty home well. Five great singles that all hit home pretty well. And then on top of that, it does have some album cuts on here. It has some blue collar gems, has some after hours hangout kind of songs, has some good other dance club moments, and five singles just for varying degrees of stuff to kind of do and such. So this is some good examples, even like a car evening hangout song just among some of those things. So that's definitely kind of the thing. 10 out of 10 social, this perfect rendition of like contemporary R&B as to how it should be and that type of stuff. In terms of the future, like Justin Timberlake, I looked him up recently. He's been gone since early 2018 with Man of the Woods, so hopefully he drops some more music because it's been a while. But I am going to start getting into some more Justin Timberlake. But I kind of thought that he had dropped an album since Man of the Woods. I kind of remember when Man of the Woods came out, but it's been a while since he's dropped a project, so hopefully we'll get some more of that. But I will review some more of these.